Being a Doctor Who fan, having to deal with long hiatuses must not be anything new. Seriously, this show goes on for around 2 months and then just dips, not coming back for around a year or so. So during this time, I've been catching up on other Doctor Who media. Big Finish, books, and the topic of this video, it's comics. Recently, I just finished the 4-part crossover story with the 13th Doctor and the 10th, and I thought I'd talk about it. So here we are. I'll be reviewing this comic like I would an episode of the show, so going over the Doctors, the companions, and the villains, and anything else that might have caught my eye. So, let's start. So how are these characters we're following during these 4 issues? Are they faithful to their TV versions? My answer is yes, which isn't always for the best, cause while 10, 13, and Martha are characters who you want to remain the same, the companion trio could have used a rewrite. Yeah, if you thought these 3 would be more useful in drawing form, I can safely say you will be disappointed. When they needed to separate, the fam's moments in the first, second, and third issues were significantly less interesting than 13 and Martha's. When they needed to keep their eye on 10, for most of their panels, these 3 were just keeping their distance and talking amongst themselves. And believe it or not, it's not interesting. Some of the things they said weren't even good looks either. Really, Ryan? Maybe think about how the Doctor, your friend, might cease to exist instead of thinking just about yourself. You have no idea how happy I was when Yaz finally had enough and went to actually talk to him. And while I do appreciate Yaz pulling out of her cop background, when the trio and 10 finally meet, there is no chemistry whatsoever. They talk, sure, but they don't connect at all. And that's part of the fun of a crossover story. Not only the Doctor interacting with themselves, but also with past or future companions. A good example of this is another crossover with the 10th Doctor. During Clara's time with the War and 10th Doctor, there's a bit of that connection. Granted, it's not long, but the time they spend together isn't wasted like it is with these 3. It really did feel like another day with these 3. They talk, but they don't connect. Not organically. I didn't blame 10 when he didn't give a goodbye to them at the end of all this. He didn't get a chance to know them. Now 13 and Martha, whenever it turned back to them, I was back into it. Their interaction was simple, nothing crazy, but it just woke me up from the sleep that the trio was putting me in. As far as the Doctor, I'm really glad they had her figure out that Martha had a thing for them. I also liked how annoyed she was with 10's obliviousness. I like how, unlike the trio, 13 just gets right into it with Martha, and immediately, talks to her. When they talk to each other, even though Martha's not 13's companion, they're able to connect. I mean, it's not hard, just talk to each other about more than just plot. This made me want to see them together for an episode in live action. And knowing that we're going to see 10 and 13 again, makes me excited to see 13 with another one of 10's companions, maybe Rose or Donna. Speaking of the Doctors, how did these guys do? Well, I didn't like the trio with 10, that doesn't mean I didn't like 10. He was great. Even when he was by himself, it was a lot of fun like he would be if Tennant was playing him himself. I loved it when 10 was interacting with 13's TARDIS too, when he verbally commented on the TARDIS's new paint job, and the TARDIS answered back with painful electricity. I loved it. 13, I already said, I really liked her interaction with Martha, which was the biggest thing about her during the first 2 issues. I did like that wallet she had full of her old faces in the first issue. It's like she's prepared for these crossovers, which makes sense at this point. We also did get the introduction of Jane Smith, the female version of John Smith. I'm pretty sure this was the first time hearing her use that name. It's kind of crazy how we haven't heard it up until now, and the comics were the first to introduce it. Like I said, 13 acts like she would on TV, so no doubt how she acted here, you'll have some people who love it, some people who hate it. I never really saw her dialogue as choppy or out of place, so I had no problem with it personally. That might be different for other people. Now, how were these 2 Doctors together? I thought they did well. I feel like 10 and 13 were the most focused on when it comes to making this story, which of course makes sense. When people heard of this story, the first thing going through their head was probably 10 and 13 would be in the same room together. But of course, just because it's the main focus, doesn't mean it always works out. This duo, I feel, did. They both felt like equals. This wasn't a story that wanted to remind people that 10 was better than 13, and it also wasn't one that was trying to make the old generation look inferior to the new. They both contributed equally. Both were able to keep up with each other's banter, and both were equally as intelligent. And they both just looked good together. Like, I can see these 2 working together live action. They kind of give this brother-sister vibe, which I guess makes sense because they're technically related. The only thing I had a problem with was the reveal. When 10 sees 13, he's given this whole panel where he's looked shocked. And they want you to think he's shocked about the gender change. Now, we all know 10 had this obsession with being ginger for a little bit.
I wanted to be ginger. I've never been ginger.
So of course the line does make sense. But you know they just put it in there to show, oh, see that 10 doesn't care he's going to be turned into a woman? Look how that doesn't bother the Doctor for even a second. And I'm just like, why? If you want us to believe that 10 doesn't care about gender, then don't make a big deal about it yourselves. You bringing attention to it does not help in any way. If you don't want to make a big deal, then don't make a big deal. Even though I don't know why 10 wouldn't at least be shocked that he's going to be a whole different gender. It's not like changing genders is a small thing, even for Time Lords. Just look at the Master.
Come on, lady version. Though, didn't you used to be a woman? I'm going to be a woman fairly soon. Any tips? Or maybe, I don't know, old bras?
Yeah, for all of 12 talk about the Time Lords not giving a crap about gender, the Master sure had a lot of comments to make about his own change. Put in quick thing to show he's surprised by the change, acknowledges it, and moves on. It wouldn't hurt. Side note, 10th Doctor's been getting a lot of spotlight lately. With Time Lord Victorious, the 4th and 10th crossover, the 10th and River crossover, and all of those Tennant and Jodie interviews we were seeing a month or two ago. David Tennant fans are not going hungry this year. Also, one last thing, their plan to get rid of the nesting consciences was simple, yet made sense and wasn't bad at all. And the plan to capture and trap the angels was also another good plan, calling back to 13's past adventure with the Star Whale. Both great plans and smart ways to trap our villains. The dialogue for the most part isn't awful. Conversations between the 10th and 13th Doctor are fun. I love when they try and one-up each other while they talk to each other. It's very multi-Doctor. I also like the dialogue between 13 and Martha. Like I mentioned before, they work very well together. And when 13 is talking to Martha, it's very warm and comforting. What I can't stand though is the overuse of witty banter from the companions, especially the trio. Like, you can have witty talk here and there, but I feel like when it's put in too much, I feel like it's just there for us to remember, oh yeah, they're here too. But they don't actually have anything meaningful to say. That also goes for the lines where the companions just go something like, can we get back to what's going on? Once again, it just feels like it's there to remind us that they're in the room too. And it just doesn't flow well at all. It completely disrupts the flow of the conversation, in fact. Like, I get one time, but there were like 3 or 4 panels where a companion was doing that, and it just felt jarring. The villains in this are pretty poor. The Weeping Angels, villains that thrive in horror, were not scary in the slightest. It's not like making them scary in the comics is impossible, just look at this 10th Doctor comic. I just feel like this wasn't the setting for them, and pairing them with the Autons didn't help at all. The antagonists didn't have a presence in this comic. They never felt like a threat or were entertaining, so they were probably the weakest part of the story. I'm not that upset by it. I mean, sure, I would have preferred if we had a memorable time with the villains, but I guess they wanted to focus on a team up between 10 and 13. In a perfect world, I guess we would have been given both. Some other quick things I like, the callback to Amy and Rory when 13 is distracting the angels. It shows just like when 13 references Bill in her 12th series. Her past companions are still in her mind, and she still has a little anger towards the ones that forced them to separate, which I think is nice. There's also the callback to the runaway bride when the team's underground. That was a recent dark day for 10, so it makes sense that he'd still be thinking about it. 13 trying to get 10 to shut up about Rose. Once again, seeing 13 caring about Martha's feelings a few lifetimes too late, but it's still really nice to see. 13 snapping her fingers and using the word spoilers was a nice callback or a call forward through 10's eyes at River. Finally, the look of everything. I'm a huge fan of the Dark Horse look for Doctor Who comics. All the characters looked solid and the background was also great, except for the one panel where the whole background was just white. That was weird. But inside 13's TARDIS had to be my favorite setting. Just the warm color coming from the pillars mixed with the dark environment. And when they got super detailed with the place, it just looked so high tech, but old and gritty at the same time. The artists did a fantastic job. Kudos to them. But despite all that praise, my overall thoughts of this story is eh. Yes, while I enjoyed the interactions between 13, 10, and Martha, the trio once again failed to catch my attention. The antagonists were poor, I felt no threat, no tension, no entertainment from either the Angels or the Autons. Finally, it took way too long to get to the meat of the story. We didn't get 13 and 10 together until issue 3, and I'm sorry, but Martha and 13's interactions were not going to be enough to satisfy me for 2.5 issues. We'll be getting another chance with these guys. Hopefully this time their team up will satisfy me, and I'll thoroughly enjoy reading the next 4 or 5 or 3 issues. Tell me what you guys thought about the last 4 issues. Did you enjoy them? Did you hate them? Are you still excited for the next comic? If you liked the video, you can like the video, and if you want to be notified when I upload next, then just subscribe. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time.